Books and blogs about coaching often encourage coaches to develop a philosophy of sport. But what it means to have a philosophy of sport can be a little bit vague and ethereal. It sounds like a good thing, but when coaches try and create a philosophy of sport, sometimes they don't really know where to start. So I'd like to try and come up with something a little bit more specific. Let me start by saying I have nothing against philosophy. Philosophy was one of my majors in college. I like philosophy. I enjoy reading philosophy. I enjoy talking about philosophy. I'm a big fan of incorporeal entities. When my parents adopted 3 cats, I named them Abelard, Pythagoras, and Heraclitus. May he rest in peace. But I get a little confused when people talk about a philosophy of something, like a philosophy of education or a philosophy of leadership or a philosophy of sport. Philosophy literally means the love of wisdom, philosophia. And once upon a time, philosophy was synonymous with all intellectual activity, that is, rational systematic thought, which was distinct from myth and superstition. And as philosophy started to emerge in its ancient Greek birthplace, we started to see a bit of specialization and differentiation between disciplines. Philosophers began to make distinctions between questions of metaphysics, or the nature of reality and existence, epistemology, the nature of knowledge and knowing, and aesthetics, or the nature of beauty and value. And some, like Plato, created beautiful and elegant ideas that spanned each branch of philosophy. New branches grew quickly during the golden age of Greek philosophy. Plato's protege Aristotle was not only interested in broader metaphysical, epistemological, and aesthetic questions, but more specific questions related to zoology and botany, which were considered natural philosophy at the time. But it wasn't until the turn of the 17th century that Francis Bacon would more fully articulate and refine the methods of scientific experimentation that would be used to pursue knowledge in disciplines such as chemistry, biology, physics, and astronomy, which we now refer to as the natural sciences. So if we consider how the term philosophy was used originally, it includes just about everything. But I don't think the term philosophy of sport is meant to be quite so comprehensive. Obviously, a philosophy of sport does not have a great deal in common with astronomy or broader questions of metaphysics and ontology. Now, maybe I'm being a little bit too literal here, but it seems to me that having a philosophy of sport would mean that someone loves developing a deeper understanding of their sport, an enjoyment of the physics and ethics and history and the techniques and tactics involved in playing the sport in a way that is beautiful and valuable. And I actually think that a coach who really enjoyed learning more about their sport would have a tremendous advantage over other coaches. Such a coach would be more likely to collect valuable information that could be helpful in making better decisions. And this approach would help them more effectively lead others, because enthusiasm is contagious. So if what we mean by philosophy of sport is thus, by all means, every coach should have one. But I still don't think this use of the term philosophy of sport is what people mean when they tell coaches that they should have a philosophy of sport. It just isn't pragmatic enough for an impatient and practical society. I think they're usually saying that coaches need to have some set of beliefs and values related to their coaching. But it still seems a little bit vague to me, like asking a contractor to build you a house based on crayon sketches drawn by a kindergartner rather than blueprints prepared by an architect. So let me suggest something a little more specific. Rather than create a philosophy of sport, why not develop your own coaching constitution? And to be totally concrete, let's use the example of the Constitution of the United States of America. In addition to having abundant resources and starting with a bunch of adventurous people who wanted to be intentional about the way that they lived, the Constitution deserves a lot of credit in making the United States the sort of place that people would literally risk their lives to get to. Now, I'm no constitutional scholar, but it seems like the Constitution was kind of like a letter written to our future selves, which tells us who we are and who we want to be and how we want to do things. It was not written for good times, but for times of turmoil, so that we would remember our priorities when tough choices needed to be made, even when strong emotions were aroused. The Constitution recognized the best and the worst of human nature, that given the freedom and liberty to pursue happiness, people would rise to new heights. But realizing that absolute power corrupts absolutely, the framers included a system of checks and balances between three separate but equal branches of government: the legislative, the executive, and the judicial, to ensure that the interests of the masses would not succumb to the selfish desires of a few tyrants who somehow found themselves in power. And the framers included provisions for changes to be made to the Constitution, but only with overwhelming consent. The United States Constitution includes a preamble that spells out why the document was written and why the United States of America was brought into existence in the first place. So as Simon Sinek would say, the framers started with why. The body of the Constitution, the articles and sections, lays out how the country would be governed, who would be responsible and accountable in various situations, what each branch of government would be responsible for, and what the rights and privileges would be afforded to members of the government and the citizenry, and when certain actions of the government would be taken. The first 10 amendments of the Constitution, known as the Bill of Rights, lay out the non-negotiable principles upon which this new nation would be governed. Things like the right to free speech, the right to peaceful assembly, the right to bear arms, the right to be free from unlawful search and seizure, the right to be free from double jeopardy in a court trial, the right to not have your house taken over by members of the military. And these rights were written to take precedence over any conflicting legislation subsequently passed into law, whether in calm or tumultuous times, so that this letter to our future selves would serve as a reminder of who we are and who we want to be, even when it would be more convenient or when emotions were aroused to compel us to violate these fundamental values. The United States Constitution was written during a time of relative calm to guide us during the most perilous storms to come. Okay, so what does this have to do with coaching or leadership? Well, I think the Constitution of the United States provides an excellent template for a document that every coach or leader should create. To be successful, any country, team, or organization needs a reason to exist and a mission to pursue, a set of non-negotiable values, and clear processes in place, so that decisions and behaviors are guided by systematic thought and careful reflection rather than emotion and convenience. And these values and processes need to be flexible, so as to be amended during calm times of deep reflection, so that, as John Wooden would say, the organization can adopt new ideas as soon as they are shown to be true ideas. So take the time to write your own coaching constitution. Start with your preamble. Write as succinctly as you possibly can answers to the following questions. Why does your team or organization exist? Why do you coach or lead this organization? And what is your mission as a leader and as a team or organization? What are your goals or objectives as a leader and as a team or organization? And how will you know when these objectives are achieved? Next, Write the body of your Constitution. Write your articles and sections clearly, and specifically articulate how your team or organization will run. This is where you are developing an organizational game plan to fulfill your mission and achieve your objectives as a leader and as a team or organization. And this is where you are establishing clear and specific processes for your organization. You can organize your Constitution any way you wish, but if you're a sport coach, allow me to suggest 5 articles. First, an article devoted to how you will teach those you lead or delegate the teaching responsibilities, with sections for specific components of the organization such as assistant coaches, athletes, team managers, and or different positions within the team such as defensive backs, offensive linemen and linebackers, or forwards and defensemen. Second, an article devoted to how training will be administered within the team, with sections on nutrition, care and prevention of injuries, strength and conditioning, and general wellness. Third, an article devoted to the management of the team and how responsibilities will be handled or delegated, with sections devoted to accounting, procurement, facilities, transportation, record keeping, and other activities relevant to your particular organization. Fourth, an article devoted to mentoring activities and how you as a leader will mentor those in your care, including assistant coaches and athletes. And fifth, an article devoted to recruiting, with sections specifying how recruiting will be handled, with specific tasks being delegated within the organization. Beyond these 5 articles, leaders should include additional articles as appropriate for their situation, such as articles on how they will balance their work life and their home life, and perhaps how they will manage their own well-being, with sections on maintaining their physical, mental, social, and perhaps spiritual condition. Finally, create a Bill of Rights, with amendments specifying the non-negotiable values of the organization and the non-negotiable rights of everyone involved in the organization, including yourself. In doing this, try to remember what John Wooden said, that it is best to put the rights of others above your own feelings, and the feelings of others above your own rights. Creating a coaching constitution is an exercise in personal reflection. And writing down your constitution to the point where you are satisfied and ready to ratify your document will force you to follow through on this critically important job of deep reflection during a time of calm. What you're really writing is a letter to your future self, laying out who you are and who you want to be, so that in tumultuous times that arouse your emotion and try your patience, your behavior will be dictated by systematic thought and careful reflection, rather than the temptation of our tempers and impatience. And just as the framers of the United States Constitution were realistic about human nature, try to be as realistic about your own nature as you possibly can, and include safeguards against the worst part of your being. And allow yourself to make amendments to your Constitution during times of calm, and only after careful reflection. Now, I'm still not 100% sure what a philosophy of sport is, but the United States Constitution provides a tangible template that we can use to develop a plan and establish our processes, clarify our vision, and articulate our values as a leader. So grab a cup of coffee and find a quiet place where you can hold your own personal constitutional convention. Write it down and print it out, and post a copy of your Constitution where you can see it. And if you want to be really bold, post it where those you lead and those you're accountable to can see it as well. Just as the United States Constitution deserves credit for America's greatness, your Constitution will help you get to where you want to be by promoting clarity in your vision and consistency in your values as you lead others, and as you implement your processes and execute your organizational game plan.